Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of PowerCore Productions and Podcastings. I'm your host, Javon Harrington, back at you with another video. And today, we are going to be continuing What If Bel Cranel Was Thor, Danmachi, The Last King, Season 2, Part 2. As always, if you're a fan of the channel and everything else that we have to offer, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcasting that has to come out now and in the future. So, if you can tell by my voice, I'm not feeling all too well today. I'm not saying that I feel too sick that I can't record, but at the same time, I just don't really feel like going through a long-winded story for this part in the series. So today's video is actually going to be a abridged version, if you will. A little short version that hits the cliff notes of everything that's going on in the story. And hopefully by the next time that I record, I'll be feeling a lot more better and I can, go for a little bit longer. But today's video, it's not going to be too long or too winded, if you will. Just going to be short and to the point with a lot of things. But I do hope that you will still enjoy the story and be entertained all the same. Again, I apologize for the change in my voice. Not feeling all too well right now. A little congested, but for the most part, I'm feeling pretty good. So we're going to rock on with today's video. Anyways, without further ado, let's get into the story. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Following the war game, the Hestia Familia were riding high on their wins. The Apollo Familia had been disbanded and had been forced to leave the city of Orario. And now this left the Familia with a new home, a large mansion that they could keep all to themselves. Unlike in the original timeline, where Hestia was in debt for the weapon that she had made for Bel at the assistance of the goddess Hephaestus, in this version of events, Hephaestus never made the weapon for Bel, as Bel already had the hammer of Thor, that being Mjolnir, by his side. So instead of being in debt with their money and being in the negative of 200 million Valis, they actually had a pretty decent amount of money to use, following their winnings and the usage for building new accommodations for their mansion. However, the process of gaining new members for their familia would still be difficult. Even though they would be able to hire and accept people, it still didn't make things any easier for our heroes. Mainly being that instead of worrying about paying them, for Bel, it was about finding people with character. It wasn't that Bel didn't like or trust any of the people that came to want to help them, but it was just that Bel had this weird feeling, a sixth sense if you will, when it came to meeting other people. And the more that time went on, the stronger this sense grew. It grew to a point where Bel just had this feeling whenever he was around someone, a feeling of knowing who should and shouldn't be with them. And after a long day of interviews, it just got to a point where Bel couldn't accept any of them. So they were still stuck with the members that they had, that being Mikoto, Lily, Welf, and Bel. These four made up the familia of Lady Hestia. But still, Bel wasn't down about it, and he tried to turn people down as gently as he could. Although the others, they could be a bit more blunt, especially Welf and Lily when it came to their reviews of the participants of their familia. But all the same, everything was going well for them. They had now moved up in status and in rank, Bell almost being to the point of a level 3. He trained daily and continued to improve. He could use Mjolnir and the Odin sword at his disposal, but from what he had learned, his weapon could still transform into 5 other weapons. He wondered what they would be and when he would get them, but he knew that this was something that he was just going to have to wait and see with time. One evening, as Mikoto was preparing to join the others for dinner, a member of her former familia would come and visit her late in the night. This was Chigasa. She had come to the mansion with news of an old friend of theirs, and that she had gotten herself into something major. Later on that evening, as everyone had turned in from dinner and was preparing to go and rest for the night, Lily and Welf would visit with Bell, telling him that they had saw Mikoto leaving. Not sure of where she was going, they would decide to follow her, the trio eventually seeing that both Mikoto and Chigusa were heading to Owario's red light district, a place that was run by the members of the Ishtar Familia, a goddess of love and fertility. All the same, as they made their way into the rather scandalous part of the city, it left them feeling a lot to be desired, especially Bell, as this really wasn't the type of place he wanted to be at. But being caught up in the crowd of people that moved around them, it made it difficult for their search, and before he knew it, Bell was separated from the other members of his familia. They would eventually catch up with Mikoto and learn of her situation. She had a friend, a girl named Harume, a fox human girl. When she had learned that she had been living here in the red light district and was actually working as a worker here, it filled her with great concern, as she didn't believe her friend could work in a place of such ill repute. But still, they wouldn't know for sure until they found her, and after learning of the situation at hand, they decided they would help her look. But they also had to try to find Bell, who had his own fair share of worries. He had gotten lost in this part of the city. He had no idea what he was doing here or how he had gotten here in the first place. And then of all people, he ended up meeting with the god Hermes, who seemed to be here on his own business as well. Of course, he had no idea what the god was doing here, but they both promised that they wouldn't reveal that they had been here, or that they had seen one another. One way or another, Bell would find himself being ensnared by the members of the Ishtar Familia, all of the women being enamored with young Bell, as they too had watched the war game, learning of the new young hero, the rookie, Gale Thunder, and that he possessed the power of Thor, someone of his status, to have him in their clutches. It was more than what they could ask for. Bell politely tried to leave, especially when things got pretty dicey, when a rather larger member of the Ishtar Familia tried to get her hands on the young Bell. Thankfully, as he was running away, he found himself in a room with a young girl who had fox-like features, dressed in a beautiful red kimono. The two sat together. At first, she believed Bell was a client, but Bell revealed that he was going to be doing no such thing, but that rather he had gotten lost. As he met with the young girl and learned of her name, that being Harume, the both of them instead would spend all night talking. When Bell had brought up some of his own backstory, talking about his love for stories about heroes and fairy tales, the two became enamored with one another, both regaling the various stories that they had listened to as children. However, for Harume, she looked down upon herself, believing that she could never be one of the damsels from the story. as in her eyes, she was nothing more but a prostitute. The following morning, as the sun started to rise, she would help Bel get back home, finding his way out of the city. Bel would look back towards Harume. However, she would only encourage him to go forward and to not worry about her. Bel wondered if everything was alright, but he knew that he couldn't afford to stay here, and so he made his way back home. As he had done so, the goddess Ishtar of the Hestia Familia would learn of what had happened the night before, and she would learn from a visit from the god Hermes that Bel, of whom had been in her city, had caught the eye of the goddess Freya, someone who had served as Ishtar's rival, the two vying for being the most beautiful goddess. Learning of this, and seeing this as an opportunity to one-up Freya, Ishtar would set her sights on capturing Bel and having him all for herself. Once they had returned home, to say that Hestia was upset that her familia would go to such a raunchy place would be an understatement. However, she would learn from Bel that nothing happened. For one, Bel was too stupid to lie. He was smart and he had many redeeming qualities, but trying to keep something secret was not one of his strong suits. But then again, Bel, despite being heroic and brave, he was naive, and that naivete was on display for everyone to see, realizing that Bel hadn't done anything at all. All the same though, Mikoto would still be worried for her friend, and it would only make matters worse when she learned that in fact Harume was indeed in the red light district as a member of the Hestia Familia. How she had gotten involved in such a lifestyle she had no idea, but she desperately wanted a way to save her childhood friend, and Bel wanted to help her as well. But Lily and even Wealth would warn them against it. If they tried to go in there, guns blazing so to speak, attempting to free her, it would only start what could be potentially an all-out war between two familias, and they had only just gotten out of their fight against the Apollo Familia in the war game, and it took all the help that they could get just to get that victory. The Ishtar Familia, while they weren't combatants by nature, were still a force to be reckoned with, and they did not have the firepower to withstand that. Plus, they had to think about Lady Hestia and the position they would be putting her in if they were to get involved in such a battle. Bel considered all of this, and he understood where his friends were coming from, and he promised he wouldn't do anything reckless. But still, for both Bel as well as Mikoto, they had to try to figure out some way to free their friend Harume. Thankfully, a meeting with the god Hermes would give them insight into what they were looking for. They learned that it could be possible to buy her freedom, and at the right price, it shouldn't be a big deal. They would also learn word of why he had been there in the first place, and that he had actually gone to meet with the goddess Ishtar, delivering something to her, something called a killing stone. Both Bel and Mikoto had no idea what a killing stone even was, but they both decided they would do their respective investigating to learn more about what this killing stone could be. From there, things would progress as normal, with the Hestia Familia making their way through the dungeon. However, it would be within that dungeon that the trap would be set, and the Ishtar Familia would launch a surprise attack, attempting to kidnap Bel. While Bel was able to fend off against most of them rather easily, there was one in particular who was able to withstand his mighty blows. Her name was Aisha, the beautiful woman, carrying and brandishing a large sword, was able to match Bel physically, even when he used the Orton sword. The power of Thor welled within him as the two engaged in combat. Despite how it appeared, she seemed to be able to match him in strength, and it was almost as if she were glowing. Bel was starting to become a bit overwhelmed, but he still had her outmatched in speed, but just barely. When it came to raw power, though, she was taking the edge. Bel was on the cusp of a level 3, still at a level 2. Pretty decent for someone of his power. He had grown more and more in learning how to use the power of Thor to his advantage. But even with the power of Thor on his side, it did not guarantee him victory in every battle that he fought. Between being overwhelmed and caught off guard, and being struck in the back of the head when he wasn't keeping his wits about him, Bel would be taken away by the Hestia Familia, and his weapon would be left in the dungeon, as no one but Bel could remove it. When Harume realized what happened, she had actually become saddened by this. It wasn't just Bel that they had taken away, but it was Mikoto as well. Harume had gone to free Mikoto, and she had tried to do the same for Bel, but she was caught. Mikoto managed to escape and make it back to the home. As she did so, everyone else would now be worried for Bel's safety, as they too wanted to know what was happening. As Hestia met with the other gods, one of which was her good friend, she would learn more about what Bel had gotten himself into, and what the Hestia Familia were planning. When the subject of the Killing Stone was brought up, Hestia and the god Takemichi Zuchi would learn a horrifying revelation. The reason for a Killing Stone was it was a powerful item. When used, it could boost someone's level tremendously. Even if the stone were to be smashed into pieces, just a sliver is all one would need to use the highest forms of magic. With a Killing Stone and dividing it into shards, one could have an army powerful and capable enough of facing any familia. It was here that the true plans of the Hestia Familia would be revealed. They planned on using the Killing Stone. Using it, they would seal away the soul of Harume, taking her power to amplify magic and distributing it amongst themselves. If they did so, it would give them the boost in power that they needed, and ultimately fulfill the goddess Ishtar's plans, that being of engaging in war against the Freya Familia. As Mikoto learned this as well, there was also one more terrifying secret that was brought to light. For Harume, if her soul was trapped inside of the Killing Stone, and that said stone were then to be smashed into pieces, in effect, you would be destroying the soul, and once one did so, the soul could never be put back together again. As the group now learned of this shocking revelation, they had to figure out how long they had before they could begin the ritual. But their chances weren't looking too good, because the ritual, in order to imbue the power of a Killing Stone, would have to be during the night of a full moon, and that night was the night of the full moon. This concludes What If Bel Cranel Was Thor? Danmachi, The Last King, Season 2, Part 2. As always, if you're a fan of today's video and everything else that we have to offer, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcastings that has to come out now and in the future. Stay tuned for tomorrow's video as we continue. What if Naruto was trained by Doctor Strange? Naruto Mystic Adventures Shippuden, Part 6. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings. Signing off, and I'll see you next time.